Hello, welcome back. Let's spend our time today on the idea that there is nothing outside you, because there is nothing outside you. A person walking down the street, your brother, is not outside you. The house across the street is not outside you. The next country over is not outside you. Neither is a distant galaxy that we can only see with a telescope. That is not outside you either. There is nothing outside you. Thank you for joining me. Kidding. Let's say some more today, because this is one of the ideas presented here in A Course in Miracles that can make you pause and think, what the actual is he saying here? WTAF is really going on here? I mean, it is not the way that we were conditioned here in the world. And no, it's not. Of course, it's not. We were conditioned to think that there's a lot of things outside us, that this organism, which is 80% water, when you think about it, it's bones and guts. And what's so deeply precious about that? We think that this is us, and we think that everyone outside us is indeed outside us. We believe in separation based on space. We also believe in separation based on time, because there, in linear time, used to be some of these that are no longer here. And in what we call the future, there'll be some of these that aren't here right now. And so on and so on. So we appear to be separate in both time and space. And reality is completely undisturbed by all this, and the separation is not reality. Which, by the way, you know. You do. You know this deep down. If you did not, you would be watching something else here on YouTube. Because there are many channels, not just here, but on all of social media. There's a lot of content out there. And yet here you are, you're interested in not just spirituality, but A Course in Miracles. Welcome. You can't go back. The way it was hasn't satisfied you, and you're on the path. So let's all be glad of that, because in this course, in this thought system, there are ideas such as there is nothing outside you that will completely turn your worldview around. It will right it. It is upside down. So this is not going to turn your worldview upside down. It's going to turn it right side up. Is it radical? Yeah. Does it speak the truth? Yeah. But how do you know? Well, you prove that to yourself through doing this, through putting the ideas in this course into practice, where your experience shows you. Through experience. Your experience shows you that these ideas are true. You prove it to yourself. Want proof? Good. Prove it to yourself. Join me, will you? That would be very kind of you to do. We've moved on to a new section here in the text. We're now in chapter 10, which is called The Idols of Sickness. We'll get into that in significant detail in the days and weeks to come. But there is a very helpful introduction to chapter 10 of the text. It's 3 paragraphs long, and it is very rich with meaning. So much so that this discussion today will be on paragraph 1, and then the next day we'll do paragraph 2, and then paragraph 3, right? In that order. There's so much here that it warrants a discussion, a single video unto itself. In fact, we could talk about this 100 times and still continue to learn. In the very first sentence, Jesus tells us that nothing beyond yourself can make you fearful or loving, because there is nothing beyond you. Nothing beyond yourself can make you fearful or loving, because there is nothing beyond you. There is nothing outside you. There is nothing beyond you. So nothing that appears to be outside you can actually make you fearful. It cannot make you loving either. There's nothing outside you. There is nothing outside you. Everything that we see here in the world, including these little fancy little organisms, are in our mind. We weren't taught that in high school biology, were we? Everything that appears is in our mind. So it's in our mind. It is not an external thing. There are no external things. Yes, mind is that powerful. It has made the world that we appear to see. Having made it through our choice to see it, we can see it completely forgiven, and we can return home, so to speak. We can unmake this world of stress and conflict, warfare, excess activity, and frustration through our own election, our choice. Do we need help to do this? Yes. Yes, indeed. Enter our inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, or whatever you call it, our inner teacher who will guide us. There is nothing outside you. So how do we explain, this is a question that often comes up, and it's a very good question. How do we explain the wild variation in our own day-to-day lives? How do we explain the wild variation in our own experience where we feel great and beautiful and on top of the world, so to speak, in one moment, and then the next minute we feel awful, something happens, and we don't feel well. We fly into a fit of rage, or we become depressed or anxious or sad. And it is a wild roller coaster ride. It is. It is that. How do we explain that in these terms, that there's nothing outside you? Everything that we appear to see with the body's eyes and taste, touch, feel with the body's sensory organs, all of that, this is in our mind. Everything that is joyous, wholly joyous here in the world, is symbolic. This world itself is symbolic. This body is symbolic. Everything that's beautiful, such as a cute baby kitten or a puppy, or a beautiful sunset, or a radiant flower, Anything that's beautiful and joyous is symbolic of our own joy, of our own radiance, of our oneness, of our brilliance and magnificence and limitlessness as Christ, the Christ, singular, the thought of God, the extension of God, the Son of God. You, me, everyone. And all of the painful stuff that goes on here in the world is symbolic of our own deep, buried, and unconscious guilt. Where does this come from? Well, it appears to arise from this notion of the separation, where we think that we're separate from God. We think, therefore, that we're separate from our brother, who's separate from his brother, and we're all this wild construct called the ego, an individual. There are no individuals. The separation is simply a mistake that can be corrected. How can we say this with 100% certainty? The separation never occurred. We could choose, and you can indeed choose to deny this all you want. You can reject what's being said in this video categorically. You can think that all spirituality is completely off the wall, ridiculous, out of touch with reality, bogus, sad, wrong, whatever adjective you choose to put in its place or add on at the end. You don't have to do anything with this right now. It is 100% your choice. It's very, very interesting here in A Course in Miracles, because at the beginning of the workbook for students, which, by the way, is where a lot of people conventionally start their study of this material, though that is not even required. It's a self-study curriculum. You start wherever you're called to start. So a lot of people begin with the workbook, and at the introduction of the workbook, Jesus says something very, very helpful to us. Tells us that we don't have to believe these ideas, the ideas that crop up in the workbook, or, by extension, the text, the manual for teachers, any of this. We don't have to believe a single word that this says. That is not required, especially at first. You can doubt this all you want. In the workbook, Jesus merely asks that we apply the idea for the day, the teaching for the day. That is it. Just apply it in the manner directed. You don't have to believe it. You may actively resist it. He even says this. You may actively resist it. Just apply it. That's all that's required. And come to realize, which I know that you already know, you've known for a long time, that applying, that practical application is where it's at. This is where the action lies on the spiritual path, is in the doing. It's one thing to understand a video or something that you read intellectually. That's one thing. It's another thing entirely to put it into practice, where your experience shows you that it's true. There is nothing outside of you. There is nobody out there, so to speak. There is no thing out there. Everything's in your mind. Here's something that the ego is highly prone to resist and rail against and shriek and squawk against. You have the ability to paint a completely different picture. You are not the victim of the world you see. Playing the victim today? Maybe you are. Maybe you know somebody who is, and we all know people that habitually do this, that take a look at their situation in life, their plight, if they call it that, and think that it's very real, and that it is the world outside that's foisting all of this suffering upon them. It's someone else's fault. It's my neighbor's fault. It's my ex's fault. It's my kid's fault. It's the government's fault. It's the global economic system, which nobody understands, fault. It's someone else's fault or something else's fault. And part of the beauty, even though it may cause short-term pain for the ego, part of the beauty of spirituality is that this is about taking responsibility for our own experience. When you truly take responsibility for your experience, you will realize how quickly and how profoundly you can remake it. Really, you can. And if you don't believe me, or if you don't believe any spiritual teacher that says something like this, all right, just try it. Try it and see for yourself, but really try it. With this adult level responsibility comes an honesty, doesn't it? So, for whatever reason that you may or may not be consciously aware of, you're ready for this. You wouldn't be watching otherwise. Therefore, I know that you're ready. At some point, you have heard the call to awaken. This is a call that comes from the Holy Spirit, from our inner teacher, who is not outside of us, not an outside force or power, but part of our mind. It's known here by many names in the Course, including the voice for God, the voice that reminds us of who we are and points the way home to us, so to speak. I say, so to speak, because we've never left our home in God. Despite our fictitious belief otherwise, that we're off running around on this spinning ball of rock, which appears to be distinct from other spinning balls of rock in this thing that we've labeled a solar system, which appears to be distinct from other solar systems in this thing called a galaxy, and on and on and on and on and on. There is only perfect oneness. God is, period. If you're familiar with A Course in Miracles, you'll know that this is one of those phrases that comes up. What is implicit here, and this is a very, very important idea, what's implicit in the two-syllable statement, God is that only God is. All else is illusion. If you're familiar with Advaita Vedanta, only Brahman is. All else is illusion. Period. Illusion. Illusion, painting. Illusion, microphone. Illusion, screen. This is a pixelated image on your screen. When something connects, it's your inner teacher. It's always your inner teacher speaking to you. This call that we mention here in many of the videos goes out to all of us 24/7. So the question for us all is, are we listening? And at some point you listened. This is answering the call. The fact that you're watching this is you're answering the call. The fact that you're interested in this big book called A Course in Miracles is proof, conclusive proof that you're answering the call. So whether you delve into it and do what it suggests is entirely up to you. But here you are. The call goes out to all of us 24/7. Are we listening? And it comes across in different ways, in different forms. You may have been consciously aware of hearing the call to awaken, or maybe not. Perhaps it was an intuitive hit or a feeling that you just got that there's got to be something more to it than this daily runaround of checking our email and hyperventilating and running off to work, or if you work at home, turning on the computer and investing your time in this thing that we call life and all of our other responsibilities, and checking email again and eating, sleeping, drinking water, going to the bathroom. There's got to be more to it than this. The Son of God's bigger than this. Yeah. Yeah, you know it. And you've always known. So again, welcome. There is nothing outside you. Only God is. Where are you? Who are you? What are you? Yes. What else? Right? So, here in the world where it concretely appears otherwise, this produces what we call a physical sensation. I can feel it. I'm slapping myself in the cheek, so we say here in earth terms. Here where it appears to be the exact opposite. This is why we have a moment-to-moment relationship with our inner teacher who reminds us of what's true. So we practice the ideas set forth in A Course in Miracles. We practice true forgiveness of the Son of God. We practice connecting with our inner teacher and asking our inner teacher for guidance. As often as we remember to do it, all of life is a giant living, breathing, waking meditation practice. If you've never thought of it this way before, I invite you to think about this. In a conventional seated meditation practice, there is typically an object of meditation that one is to focus one's awareness on. It could be the breath. It could be the sound of a guide, if it's a guided meditation, or music, or a mantra, or it could be something that you're visualizing. Whatever that is, there's typically an object of meditation that serves the valuable purpose of an anchor. When you notice that you're distracted and carried away in the mind, when you're thinking about a picnic that you had at age 14 in the mountains, when you're thinking about yesterday's sales meeting, or the fact that your knee hurts, or the fact that you've got a really important call in 15 minutes and you're going over in your mind what you are or are not going to say to that person, when you notice that you're distracted and carried away, bring your awareness back to the object of meditation. It's practice for life. Bring your awareness when you notice yourself distracted. If you're going through the workbook, that's a perfect thing to bring your awareness back to, the idea of the day. If you're not, bring your awareness back to your relationship with your inner teacher. Bring it back to forgiveness. Bring it back to extending love to the Son of God. Whatever your anchor looks like, all of life is a living, breathing, waking meditation. When you notice that you're carried away and judging and blaming others, or playing the victim, thinking that you're the victim of the world that you see, which appears to be outside you. When you're there, as soon as you notice and become aware of this. Bring your awareness back to true forgiveness. Bring your awareness back to your relationship with the Holy Spirit. Ask the Holy Spirit for guidance. Bring your awareness back to the word one, or love, or the phrase Son of God, or God is, or something. Whatever this is, bring your awareness back when you're distracted. And please don't beat yourself up for being distracted. There are a lot of phenomena out there. So it will happen. When it does, simply drop whatever it is that you were thinking about, bring your awareness back. And in fact, you could choose to forgive whatever it is that you're thinking about. If you're judging, forgive the object of your judging. It's not outside you. This does mean, if you're doing the verbal math, that when you forgive someone, you're forgiving yourself. There is nothing outside you. Now, when you're blaming and condemning someone else, you're blaming and condemning yourself, because there's nothing outside you. So which would you rather have? That's the question. And my fervent hope is that you may choose forgiveness, true forgiveness of the Son of God. All right. So we're going very slowly through this introduction to chapter 10 here of the text, and it is inevitable that questions will arise. So if you have them, please feel welcome to leave them here. This is a safe space, and really as good a place as any for discussion of A Course in Miracles and all things spiritual that you'd like to talk about. So if you've got questions, please leave them. And if you'd like to just pop in and say hello or offer a comment, you're more than welcome to do that. We'd love to hear from you. And if you've not yet subscribed, we'd love to have you. This is the subscription button. Just hover or click that arrow in the corner of your screen, and up pops a little prompt that says subscribe. Please join us. And thank you to all of you who have recently subscribed. We've had a number of you in the last few days. So the more, the better. Tell your friends if you think they'd be interested in hearing that you're not a body and there is no world. Things like that. All right. So thank you for joining me. I will talk to you very soon.